Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Naval Action. So I'm here in my Essex and I'm going to talk about some changes which are on the way. Mostly let me just recollect my thoughts, sorry. Messed up on the start of the video, of course I did. But anyways, admin posted a topic about food supplies. So food supplies or provisions will become a thing. In a way which some might like and some might dislike. It depends. Some people will hate it. Some people will say, fair enough, it's good enough for what it serves. So, I'll go through, say what the thread basically says. So, in the age of sail, ships were usually 3 to 6 months of provisions. And the devs don't want to have the unnecessary hassle of constantly refilling provision for active PvP or PvE players. But they still want to add it to increase the prices of ships like the Santissima, which are currently, Santissima and Victories for example, they're very cheap ships. Like they're not expensive. So they want to increase those costs. And they're going to do it in this way. So they will add a new resource in the game, obviously, food supplies, which will be added to ship blueprints. So to build a ship, you're going to need these food supplies. And the amount of food supplies needed on a ship will depend on max possible crew. So Santissima will need more food supplies than a Victory. And food supplies will be available in all ports. It will be cheaper in some ports. It'll be cheaper if you craft them yourself or gather them yourself, including possibly fishing. And they will be this will be added in next patch. So the advantages and disadvantages of this. So the advantage of this, obviously, it's a one thing deal. You just buy it once and it's over with, which is good for people that don't like to micromanage provisions and such. And it makes sense since your ship, chances are you'll lose your ship before, say, 6 months has gone, which is what the ship's provision would be. And it saves some micromanaging. It's a one-pay fee, so you don't have to worry about having cash on hand for possible provisions and such. Which I like, and of course it does the job of increasing the price of ships, large ships, which currently, like I said in the beginning, they're quite cheap. However, the disadvantage of this is for people who want a more in-depth system, and I've seen it on Reddit and on the forums, that there's people who want a more in-depth system. There's two camps, notable camps. There's people who like it, how it is, it's a one-time thing, forget, leave it, do it and forget, I mean. And there's others who want a more in-depth system, and I'm partial to neither. But there's those that want a more in-depth system where you have to actually fill up provisions when you enter port and so on, where you actually have to micromanage your provisions, and possibly shot and powder as well, etc. And, well, you know, both will, in the end, be a solution to the same problem, kind of. They both will solve the problem of souls being relatively cheap right now. Ships of the line being relatively cheap. The thing about the one time and forget, once you have it, you don't have to worry about any extra costs or anything. However, with continual provisions, having to micromanage that, a ship of the line would be more expensive to run over a long period. So you would be more discouraged in using the ship of the line since it would be expensive to run. With a one-time forget, you won't be discouraged to use it because it will cost you to run it. You'll be discouraged because it's more expensive to get it back. But in the end, you will be discouraged to use it, and it'll be expensive, of course, the run system, depending on the lifetime of a ship, the cost of having to continuing supply would be less, potentially less if the lifetime of a ship is short. Depending on prices, of course, I'm assuming now that continually running would be cheaper, since you don't fill up for 6 months at a time, you fill up, say, 10 days at a time. So it would be cheaper in the short run, but in the long run, more expensive. But in the end, it still does the same thing. In the end, what it does is it makes ships of the line more expensive, which I have always been a supporter of. I think ships of the line is too cheap. So, in my personal opinion, which system they choose doesn't really matter. What will essentially in the end happen anyways is that ships of the line are more expensive. There's more activities, since I assume the devs have talked about this, that fishing might come in. So, and I want to be a fisherman on the 7 seas. So there will be more activities. The goal of having ships of the line become more expensive. Part of another task that they did to work on the same thing was carriages. And this system also having a one time, it's simpler for the devs to develop, since they just add fishing, add provisions as a resource, plunk it in the crafting recipe, voila, they don't have to do anything more. It's pretty simple to introduce. However, if there's enough outcry from the community, they could at a later date expand on it. But in the end, no matter which system you choose, a static one-time thing, or a ongoing thing, the result will be the same. And honestly, I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna be building a lot of ships of the line before the patch hits to save on that ka-ching, make some money when it hits. Hehehe. I'm not worried about money, so I don't think I'll do that in seriousness. But so yeah, this will come in the next content patch, so beware. And I like it since some people aren't aware of this or like hoarding their money, but there's an inflation problem in naval action. And the devs have stated multiple times that they're going to fix that, and this is a step. Introducing resources, another money sink. Money sink sounds like bad thing, but really it isn't a bad thing. If you don't have any money sinks, you'll have people running around with millions. So money sinks isn't a bad thing. They've also talked about, in a post, they talked about maybe turning off gold getting for damage done, so maybe you only get that gold for capturing or sinking ships. Also working against inflation, but of course that is another thing. I just quickly mention it since it's all about economics in naval action. So yeah, tell me in the comments, what do you think? Do you prefer a static or a continuous provision system? And when I say static, it's the one-time pay and forget. Or is there any other kind of system you would prefer? Personally, I don't mind either. In the end, they both do the same thing in principle. But what do you think? Do you have any preferences? So discuss in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye.